Hi guys, welcome to my channel, and today we're going to talk about a very interesting and exciting topic that touches so many of you. We're going to talk about compulsive eating and eating disorders, particularly emotional eating, binge eating, restriction cycle, and we have a very special guest. Mary O'Malley is an author, a teacher, and a counselor that I was introduced just a couple of weeks ago, and I already feel that her work has changed my relationship with food and my relationship with my body. So today you have a very unique opportunity to get to hear some of Mary's wisdom. And before we get to the questions, I wanted to introduce Mary a little bit more. So Mary specializes in awakening others to the joy of being fully alive. That's a cool job, right? Her inspired and transformative approach to compulsions offers a way to replace fear, hopelessness, and struggle with ease, well-being, and joy. And Mary has several CDs and books and an amazing website. She does retreats and coaching sessions. But today we'll just give an overview of Mary's approach to compulsions because I feel like it's extremely unique. So Mary, do you want to say a couple of words about your work and what exactly you do?
Well, I think the best way to describe it is with a little metaphor. Imagine a beautiful meadow, and everything in that meadow flows. And the fir tree doesn't wish it was the maple tree, and the bunny isn't concerned that it's bigger than the next bunny. And day flows into night, and there is death, and there's even violence in that, but there's no resistance to that. And all of us lived in the meadow of our being when we were very young. We did. At one time, there were no thoughts in our head, and we were connected to life. And then slowly and surely, we took on a self-image. And have you imagine clouds in the sky? They begin to lower and lower, and pretty soon they swirl around your head. And so all you pay attention to is this storyteller in your head that is always trying to control life, to judge life, to try to make it be different or better than what it is, especially you. The key in this little metaphor is you've never left the meadow. And so what I do, I have 4 different books, and as you said, I lead retreats and do phone groups and phone counseling, all with the intent to have a place where people can rediscover the meadow again and dissolve, not solve, the cloud banks so that they can live from the meadow of their being.
That sounds beautiful. So let's talk a little bit more specific about compulsions because the metaphor is amazing, it's beautiful, but for somebody who is in the moment struggling with their habits, struggling with their body, it might be all so far away and so hard to connect to. How do we bring it back to the earth? So what brought you to an understanding that compulsions, including binge eating or restriction or all other eating disorders, that they can be our friends and teachers? It's such a weird concept. It just gives me goosebumps.
I know, it is. But innately we kind of were called, oh, isn't that interesting? It rings true to us in some place. Most people don't know how to get there. So I think the way to answer that question is to give you a little bit about my journey with compulsions.
Yeah.
I can remember the first time was hiding with a bag of candy, underneath my desk in my bedroom, and I was about 10 years old, and just endlessly, and it was candy that I stole from my dad's cupboard, and I just would eat and eat and eat lemon drops and rock candy. And then the second memory I have is of being 12 years old and coming home from school, and I literally started a conveyor belt. I would put 2 pieces of toast in the toaster. When they came out, I would put 2 more pieces. I would butter the toast, and then when they would come up, I would put 2 more pieces, eat the toast, butter the toast, and eat and eat and eat until I made myself sick. And then I discovered the joys of diet pills. through my stepmother. And oh my goodness, went on so many diets and, learned to throw up and learned to restrict and learned to rebel. And it got to the place, in my early 20s that I once went without eating for a month.
Wow.
And 2 other times for 2 weeks. But then, of course, I would restrict and then explode. And when I was almost 24, I gained 97 pounds in a year, from doctor scale to doctor scale. And all of that was happening at the time that I was trying to control it all. And it seemed that the more I tried to control what I was eating, the more strong the eater became. And so it was probably in my late 20s that I began to, this little thought began to wake up in my head saying, I don't think this works. I mean, it was a very radical thought that this idea that I just wasn't controlling good enough. If I could just be more strong in my will, and if I, when I would go on a fast, and then if I started eating again, I would not eat anything that was unskillful, and of course then it would explode in my face. And that's when I began to become curious about what was going on. And, it was a thing that evolved over time, but what I saw were 2 very important things. And the first is that the title of the book is The Gift of Our Compulsions. And the first gift is that I began to realize, not try to think and figure out and psychoanalyze what I was experiencing, but I began to use compulsions to be interested in what I was experiencing right then. And I could see there were very deep, ancient, old feelings of unworthiness and fear and loneliness and shame. Oh my goodness, shame and despair. And I realized that this eater inside of me had been trying to manage those feelings for all of these years because I didn't know what to do with them. That they were overwhelming. They would come up and they would be oceanic, and then I would stuff it back down again. And so that's the first gift that I saw is, oh my God, you know what? In a way, I needed them because I did need to keep these very strong feelings at bay because nobody ever taught me how to be with them so they can be healed. The second gift is when I began to realize that whenever I was interested in eating unskillfully, there was a part of me there that needed me. That it was one of those ancient beliefs. They say pretty much so that our opinion of ourselves and of life was formed before we were 6. And so there's very deep feelings we all carry, that we all experienced as children. And I began to see that the urge, and one of my definitions of compulsion is the act of turning away from ourselves. And so much of this work is about turning toward ourselves. And so I began to use compulsions as my guide, that whenever they were there, that means there was a part of me, inside of me, that needed me so it can be set free. And we probably don't have time in this short interview to talk about those steps. And, if your listeners are interested, they can email me and I'll be glad to send them the single CD, that can give them, more of that information. And of course, it goes much more in depth in the book. And then I've written a new book called What's in the Way is the Way. And it's even a deeper exploration of how to use your attentive heart to actually heal what the compulsions have been taking care of. So you no longer need the compulsion. It isn't something you to get rid of. It isn't something you stop. As soon as you try to get rid of or stop a compulsion, you are energizing it. It's that old adage of what you resist persists. And so this is a total other approach. It's not about controlling, it's about connecting. And I think that it may be skillful if I told a little story right now. Okay?
Sure, it's so beautiful, and I really connect with so much wisdom that you're mentioning, and I think a lot of some of the things that I'm hearing is the first step is start being mindful of the feelings that we are experiencing.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's do the story.
So you'll love this story. So this has happened at 9/11, and you know it is. I was out of compulsive eating for many years before this, and because I even keep a chocolate bar in my house at all times, so that compulsive knows that if it needs something, it's there. I'm not going to deny it, and so that I can be aware that when I'm interested more than just a little bite, then there's something inside of me that needs me. So this has happened on the morning of 9/11. And, of course, I got up and the phone started ringing, and then I turned on the television, and there it was, and I was just in shock. And then the clients came, and then I had a group. And at the moment that the last person left and I closed the door, I had a firestorm of this urge to go to the store and inhale the whole store all in one fell swoop, which, I haven't eaten a whole store, but boy, I have gone to a store in my life and gotten home and just ate and ate. Well, actually in the car on the way home, just ate and ate. Well, actually in the store, I would go shopping and grab things and eat it and then hide them behind, the half packages behind, the cans of spaghetti or something like that. And it was just so strong. It just took me by, my neck, and I went in and got my purse, and I got all the way out to the door where my car is.
Mm-hmm.
And curiosity kicked in and said, oh, what is going on here? And the eater said, don't give me any of that stuff. I am going to the store. But I have created a relationship with she who eats inside of me, enough that it trusts me. And I said, sweetie, I see, that you really feel like you're going to die if you don't go and eat all this stuff at the store. But I remind you that we don't feel very good when we do that. And she said, I don't care. I want to go to the store. And I said, I'll tell you what. Give me 5 minutes. Let's go sit on the porch. And let's just turn within and see what is there. Well, okay, but just 5 minutes. And then we're going to the store. And so I go to the porch, and it's a beautiful September day. And I live underneath this 145-year-old grandmother maple. And, the leaves are starting to golden. And I just took a few breaths. And I turned my attention within. And there was this big knot here. And that was what I was trying to eat away. I wanted to eat away. And I just turned my attention and I began to gently breathe into it until this holding, this deep fear, that I saw it. And I was here for it. And it opened like a flower into grief. And I just sobbed and sobbed for all the children that lost parents, even for the terrorists, that they would live a life that they would think that that was a skillful action. And it took about 10 minutes, and the energy passed through, and there was not one iota of interest of going to the store anymore. Because what I had done was I had taken care of what, for most of my life, until I started doing this kind of work, the compulsions had been taken care of. So when I self-published, before my publisher picked it up, the title of the book was healing and being healed by our compulsions. And I think that story really relates to that.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and I think there are a couple of things that you highlighted that are so important for people to know is that understanding something and consistently applying it can be completely different things. You mentioned that even though you already were leading groups and you were working with people, that even then
Yes.
it was
Yes.
a matter of that inner dialogue, of reminding
Yes.
yourself, of being curious. So I think a lot of women, they want to go from 0 to 100.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And the expectations for ourselves are, I need to be perfect right away. And
Right.
once I learn something, I need to be able to apply it 100%.
Yes.
So how do we, like, the things that you're explaining are so beautiful. How do we stay curious? How do we create that dialogue and that inquiry? But then maybe one day we fail, we forget, and then we engage in that same behavior. How do we restore faith in ourselves?
I would not use the word fail.
Okay.
That this is a journey of opening and closing. What happens to your heart valve? If your heart valve was always open, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't pump blood. If it was always a winter, it was always closed, life wouldn't work. I mean, everything opens and closes. And so in this fear-based storyteller, it thinks because it's based on this real core belief, I'm not enough, I'm not doing it good enough, I'm not doing it right enough, and now I have to do it right, and I have to get it under control, which, as we have explored, only causes things to rebel and resist, and then we find ourselves in trouble again. This is why I call what's in the way is the way. We begin to understand that when the times that it all falls apart, there's something there to learn. So what I learned was I began to not judge my ways of compulsion. Oh my God, I tried to control them for years, and I'm a Taurus, so I can control really well. And I would get it under control, and then it would all, fall apart again. So then I thought, okay, well, let's do this differently. And I began to trust that whenever a wave came, it wasn't something I was doing wrong. In fact, it was something that I was supposed to learn. And of course, at the beginning, I could only remember that after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because the muscle of my curiosity wasn't yet strong enough.
Okay.
But I began to learn not to judge myself, because that's what happens when a wave comes and the compulsion says, oh, I'm your best friend, I will make you feel so much better. And then, well, maybe for a couple of minutes, and then the guilt starts happening, and the tummy aches start happening, and the headaches start happening. And then we flip into, oh my God, I did it again. What's wrong with me? I'll never get this. And that's when you begin to learn how to shift into, oh, I got caught again, and now I'm caught in judgment. And let's be curious. So I use those times when I wouldn't judge it, I got interested in it. And it's so amazing. People say, well, I know the price I pay. We know it up here. We don't allow ourselves to actually recognize the truth that compulsions make us feel worse. They really do. And when you can actually feel it, actually experience it, because you're not seeing through the filter of judgment, then the chances are, like happened in my 9/11 story, that wave was so strong. It was like I'm going to die if I don't eat, because the grief was so strong. And I was able to remind myself and remind the eater that it doesn't take us to a good place. you discover that by not seeing it as failing, by seeing it that life is teaching you something, it's showing you something. And that's why I can say truly that one of the greatest gifts I was given was to be a highly compulsive person. Because the wonderful thing about compulsions is that you cannot control them. You can for a while, and if you do muscle one down, then another one will take over.
Exactly.
You stop overeating and you shop more. You stop over drinking and you smoke more.
Or some people, they over-exercise.
Oh, yeah. Or just busyness. Busyness is a compulsion too. Compulsions are the act of turning away from ourselves. So you can be compulsive about most anything.
Yeah.
But a very deep compulsion in society is around food.
And you mentioned in the very beginning that we're never taught how to be present with our feelings.
Yes.
So a lot of people grow up and go through their adult life without knowing about mindfulness and without not even understanding the concept of being present and holding space for yourself without judgment.
Yes.
So what is the first step? It's a short interview and people can learn a lot more in your book and your CD.
Yes.
But if it was a first step on how we learn to build that dialogue, what is it that we do?
Well, I think it is, number one, I think the meadow analogy is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's your natural state. Joy is your natural state. And what is joy? It's when energy flows through you easily. I love to say happiness is getting what you want, and that's okay. Joy is the ability to be with what is. So it's understanding that ease and that joy and that flow and that feeling that it's okay to be me, it's enough to be me, is our birthright.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were young, slowly and surely, we tighten this. We learn how to hold our breath. We learn how to run away to our minds. And we become human doings rather than human beings. And the key is to begin to know that anything that tightens you is of this storyteller, this struggling self that you took on when you were young.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that opens you is healing. That's why it's so healing to let go of the war with your compulsions and let them guide you. Now, the next step is to know that all of those feelings, I mean, I tried to kill myself 3 times, in my early 20s. So I know what it's like to be really deeply contracted. I also live from openness and groundedness and joy. And so you begin to see that all those beliefs, I call them spells in the new book. I love that word. All the spells that you took on when you were young, before you were 6, tighten you. The spell of fear, of shame, of loneliness, of not enoughness, of despair, of anger. All these spells tighten you. And so it's becoming a tightness detector. It's letting your body show you when you're getting caught in struggle. And you can also get to know what's there by how it tightens your body. And I talk about this a lot in the book, because all of these feelings that got frozen inside of us that we use compulsions to manage are just bound up energy. There are joy that is bound up, and it shows up. Oftentimes that not enoughness shows up as a knot in our belly, or our grief shows up as an elephant on our chest, or our self-judgment shows up as cricks, in our neck,
Or the jaw.
Over the jaw, yes, and the holding on. And so just to begin to notice that your body and how it tightens, to become curious after or during or even before a wave of compulsion. How is the body tightening? And if that intrigues you, then explore this more, because your compulsions will bring you home. They will, if you listen.
That's amazing. Well, Mary, thank you so much for sharing and spending time with us. And we're going to post a link to your website and an email that people can get in touch with you to get the recording for the CD.
Yes.
So guys, look downstairs, down right below the video, and you'll have all the information about Mary. And I hope we'll have you back soon, because you have so much wisdom to share. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much. It's